Welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody's having a wonderful, wonderful day. Hope you guys had a good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us back here on the X Factor Safety live stream. So, like we talked about, we are going to be talking about the zero target zero, and I'm going to bring my man Nate Braymen. Y'all also know him as Redbeard. How you
Hi.
guys doing? How you
How
doing,
you
Nate?
doing? I got the coffee. Got the
Yes,
coffee?
sir. Got the coffee ready. We're good.
Heck yeah.
It's gonna be some good conversation here. So, again, thank you guys for tuning in. Those of you that are watching, we greatly appreciate it. You know, we strive to make sure that you guys have good content coming out of the X Factor Safety. I know Nate's been putting out a lot of stuff, so you know those. Just want to talk about Safety Connect 2020. That's going to be, here in a couple of months, in October. But your method behind making your your promos is awesome. So give us a little bit about that before we actually dive into our subject.
Well, that's interesting because it's kind of a new tactic. Um, it's a new app actually. I'll just tell people about it because I get people sending me messages all the time. How are you doing that? How are you making those videos? And it's a new app called Reface. And check it out. It's fun. Once you start, it's kind of addicting. So I've just been goofing around on that, and I thought, hey, this is kind of disturbing and attention grabbing. I'm like, I'll just throw some stuff out there. Why not? You know.
No, it's definitely attention grabbing. I tell you that. It definitely grabs your attention, especially with the Beyonce song that was pretty cool, pretty dope, and then the recent one with the Britney Spears, that one was pretty fire too. I mean, it's just bringing back the old school flavor, but
Heck yeah.
you know,
Everybody
in a
loves
new
Britney.
way. Oh yeah, everybody loves Britney. So no, that's awesome. So if you guys don't know, go check out Safety 2020. Where can they sign up at?
Well, actually, the easiest way to do it is to look it up on Google Safety Connect and then also search Safepedia. Because if you only search Safety Connect, you'll get some kind of like a Toyota service for your car or something. Or check out one of my posts. I post about it pretty frequently. So
Nice.
or send me a message. I'll send you the link. Yeah.
There you go. So let's dive right into our topic today. Zero target zero. It is, and we, again, this can get a little, more than PG. We do cuss sometimes on here, a little explicit. So if you got the kids around, make sure you send them to the other room because, again, we drop some bombs.
Do,
But
do they allow that on LinkedIn Live?
yeah, of course.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask because I'm like thinking, do
Yeah.
I need to keep it PG? All right.
No,
Good to
of
know.
course.
Good to know.
No, of course. We can. We tried to keep it again very professional. Again, this is insight to you guys, bringing you value. So zero target zero. What is your take on it, Nate?
Well, anybody who sees any of my posts should know I don't like it.
Why?
Gosh, like the elevator in a nutshell, it's actually really simple. Um, so the key to safety is learning. Okay, so if you don't learn about your problems, you can't fix them. If you don't know about your hazards in your workplace, you can't fix them. And then guess what? Somebody else is going to get hurt. Target zero eliminates your ability to communicate clearly with your employees. It's as simple as that. And the reason is because of fear, because typically when you have a goal, you have incentives and payouts and that sort of thing attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
You have your KPIs, you have, it'll impact the amount of money you make. And people are consequence driven. Like people go to work to make money. And if you threaten that money, even a part of it, then some percentage of your population of your employees is going to be at least tempted to not report something if they think they cannot report it. And that's a problem because how can you learn about the hazards if people aren't reporting them to you? Fear is a killer of communication, and target zero causes fear. It also creates a blame culture, which causes more fear. So in a nutshell, that's my main gripe with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, you try to hit, and of course, in a perfect world, it would be great to hit zero injuries, to have zero accidents, zero injuries, right? In a perfect world. But again, we don't live in a perfect world. So, to say, target zero, we're going to, that is our goal. That is our main goal, to have zero accidents.
Yeah.
Well, if again, like you said, it raises that fear culture, that fear of, oh, well, shit, if I report this, I probably am going to get reprimanded, fired, you know,
hmm
put on
Or just
suspension.
the social pressure of being the one that ruined the streak,
Yep. Yep. No,
and
definitely.
you know what, employees are smarter than that. You don't have to have a goal of zero for them to understand that injuries are bad. You know, and it's almost like demeaning to employees to say, well, if we set a goal higher than zero, then that means that people are going to think that injuries are okay. It's like, no, nobody thinks that way. Like, I've never met anybody that thinks, yeah, I want to get hurt. Like, that's just
Right.
crazy,
Right. Yeah, nobody wakes up and says, "Hey, today I'm gonna go, stick my hand inside this conveyor and get my finger pinched, or I'm gonna get hurt today." Nobody says I'm gonna get in an accident. It's an accident for a reason. You don't plan it.
Yes.
Um,
Right.
and I was doing some research. I was looking, and I found these 10 steps in the right direction. Granted, this was over 10 years ago that this were posted for the zero accidents, target zero type mentality. Number one was make sure everyone is committed to safety. Um, from top management to the newest employee, obviously got to be committed, and the wording at the end, committed to safety as number one priority.
Hmm.
That right there is me personally calling it a priority versus a value versus a mindset, because again, priorities get shifted constantly. So
Mm-hmm.
if you call it a priority, how is somebody going to be committed to safety if their priority is now production or getting a raise,
Mm-hmm.
or what's your
Well,
take on that?
Well, communication is so important, and you know, Voltaire. There's a quote by Voltaire that says, "If you wish to speak with me, first define your terms." Right. So, what does safety mean? Right. It means something else different to everybody. It means something else to you as it does to me because it's a nebulous term.
Mm-hmm.
So to say be safe, like there would be no job for you or I if you could just tell employees just be safe, like because
Right.
that's all zero is. It's just telling people don't get hurt. It's in the negative. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't get
Mm-hmm.
injured. Right. Um, and you know that's the problem is that it's not intuitive for people. You're not really telling them how to be safe. You're just telling them don't get hurt. It's a negative. Like my cough. If I'm at a restaurant and I'm out of my coffee, I'm not going to tell the waitress. I'm not going to say, "Hey, remove the negative space from my mug, please."
Right.
Like, don't let my cup get empty. I mean, I guess you could say it that way, but that would be kind of weird. No, you say, "Fill it up, please.
Yeah.
More coffee," right?
Yeah.
More coffee. It's like, this is what I want you to do in order to achieve the goal of removing the negative space from the glass. And so, like, communicating to employees, if you say, be safe, it's not telling them how to be safe or what to do. It's just, oh, that's just a nice pie in the sky kind of idea.
Right.
You have to tell them what to do, what you want them to do in the positive.
Now, you say communicate, and obviously, now is there can could we over communicate to where it starts to fall on deaf ears? Like, oh man, I've heard this fucking thing over and over again. This message comes every week. Is there? Do you think that sometimes it gets monotonous like that?
No, I don't think so. Well, I mean, I guess in some cases it could. It depends on the context, right? But it has to be marketing. Like, one of the things that I think is really important for safety people is to market ideas. You have to be, especially in my role. Like, I'm a corporate safety guy, which I feel like I need to brush my teeth every time I say that. Like, I'm not proud of that. Like, I typically don't like saying that, but that's kind of my background, is more coordinating, and I have to do a lot of communicating. And so I'm telling you, like, you can't just say something one time and then everyone has it. Right. I think there was a study that showed, I can't remember the exact stats on it, but it was something like only 30%, about 1/3 of the people who are, like, in an audience are actually paying attention at any given time, because people are constantly zoning out and, like, thinking about something else or looking at their phones or doing whatever. They're being distracted. That's what humans do. And so you get about 30% attention. So if you're talking to an audience and you're trying to convey an important message, If you say it one time, you get 30%, right? If you say it another time, you maybe get, 40%. You have to say it over and over and over again. Now, that doesn't mean you should be boring about it, right? And I try not to be boring in my messaging, but if you actually look at the things I'm saying, I repeat myself over and over and over again. And like the most important things you can do when you're marketing an idea, look at Coca-Cola. Take hints from the best marketers in the world. They don't, you see Coca-Cola so many times, right? So what you want to do is you want to be frequent, and you want to saturate your audience as much as you can, and you have to be actionable. Yeah. Those three things. So you do have to repeat yourself, and honestly, you probably could go overboard with it, but you're going to feel like you've said it so many times, and you're only going to have like 50% of the people that heard you. So it's happened to me so many times. I sent an email to a group of people, and emails are even harder because no one wants to read through the whole thing, So you have to like put the action items first, and then it's not easy, and you have to repeat yourself and ask over and over and over again. So you're going to feel like you're repeating yourself way more than what you probably actually have to do, in my experience.
Yeah. And we got some Jennifer Martinez. She said, "True, distracted more now than ever." That is completely true. Again, with social media, with your phones, you're in a safety meeting. You're trying to get a message out there to somebody. She said the story of my life. You're trying to get a message out there. Yeah, we definitely can all relate. And the average adult learner, has to hear stuff 3 to 5 times for them to actually retain it. And again, you learn that going through, your OSHA trainer courses, and you have to find different ways for them to actually retain that information. Can't just throw up a PowerPoint anymore like, we used to, and say, listen to me speak about this PowerPoint, have a couple videos, and bam, you're going to retain all this great information that I'm trying to give you. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
Now it has to be to where you become creative in the way, like you said, marketing the ideas around the mindset, the culture, the shift that you're trying to, have an influence on. So what's been one of your biggest challenges in regards to target zero mindsets that you've come across?
Yeah. Well, one more thing I was going to add to that marketing thing is you should also have a strong visual. Yes. That also helps a lot, like a red beard, right? So yeah, one of the biggest challenges has been the fact that humans are humans, and as you get older, you tend to get higher in your crystalline intelligence. And what that means is that you're less likely to learn. It's where that saying, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks," that's where that comes from.
Right.
Somebody gets older, you get set in your ways because you've gone and done things a certain way, especially if you've gone up in a company. Then you're like, hey, this has worked for me so far. Why should I change now? And if you have a really cushy job and with really high pay, you're less likely to challenge the status quo of your superiors because you don't want to lose this cushy job. You don't want to fall out of favor with these guys. Right. And in a lot of jobs, you have to kind of cozy up to the people above you in order to get promoted. That's just how it is. So it's all about this, like, it turns into the situation where it's like this political game where it's all about optics. Like I hear the word optics all the time, and it pisses me off, frankly. Now, it's like, I get it. Optics matter, but not when you're sacrificing principles to get there. It's like if you're on a boat and your principles are your rudder. And if you have no rudder, you're just going to be going in circles. And that's the biggest frustration I have is you end up with these people who've gone up in the ranks, who are making these decisions, who don't want to learn anything. They're not willing to learn. Now, there are some exceptions. Some people have blown my mind. They're older and they've come around. So there's always exceptions, of course.
Right.
But you have multiple layers. Like, you could talk to the executives and then you talk to the CEO, and then but then maybe they listen, maybe they don't. But even if they do, now there's the board that they have to answer to. And I personally, most people in my role, mid-senior level managers, they don't have any way to reach out to the board. Especially in a big company, there's a lot of gatekeeping, information control, and everyone's worried about looking good. So it's impossible to make change. And I've almost resigned myself to the point where after seeing, this situation where there's all these champions who are saying, okay, we need to fix these things. We need to set our goals on something other than, target zero, or aside from their OSHA recordables, like let's look at valued behaviors. Like, what are the things that we're putting into the system? What are the things we want employees to do? Let's encourage those things. And then we can watch our outcomes. We can watch our OSHA recordables kind of in the background and see what's effective and not effective, right? But it's almost, I've almost resigned myself to this idea that it's not going to change until people move out or retire. And I'm not trying to blame like any certain generation or anything like that. It's just human nature is you tend to increase in crystalline intelligence as you get older. And when you're younger, you're more fluid intelligent. You're more likely to be flexible. That's why kids can learn iPads so easily and all that kind of stuff, So battling human nature is a tough one.
Yeah, no, and it kind of goes, like you said, the politics behind it, at the mid level, or even more at the senior level. I feel sometimes it's the the Parkinson's law. Sometimes you just feel that time to until it's complete. I come in, punch a clock, I do the bare minimum, and then I'm able to if I just do the bare minimum, guess what? I'll move up quicker because I'm, flying under the radar or not actually being, a voice. So it's
you could
it's crazy.
You won't rub someone the wrong way if you're quiet all the time.
Correct. So again, Mr. Brian Humphreys, he says, "Speak truth to power." Yes, sir. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sure everybody's aware. Nathan Bennett, my man, everyone's answer to someone. Value behaviors, love it. Again, and it's true. Everybody answers to someone. We all end up having to boss some way, somehow. We have to report to somebody. But again, let it not be stagnant. Let it not be stale. And what we're trying to portray and talk, even if, again, that transparency upward as well as downward needs to be there in order for a good safety culture, safety mindset, safety champions to be, bred up in the ranks.
For sure.
Jennifer, she said, yes, principles and core values are essential.
Yes.
That is
principles.
True. Yes.
That's you always have to start with your principles, and then you almost use it as a lens. Like in my book, I talked about the two lenses, the lens of principles and lens of practicality. You always start with principles because you don't want to do something unethical. So you start with your principles, you filter out what your options are. And then out of those options, then you use the lens of practicality. You have to see what's practical, because there's a lot of people who will say, we have to do this because it's principled. And it's like, well, I agree in principle, but it's just not practical. So the real sweet spot is where those two things intersect. Both what's principled and practical.
Oh yeah, definitely. It runs that fine line to where they come to that happy median of, it's part of the principles that we've well established, but then it's also practical for the day-to-day use. And again, it's just like being out in the field. You said, and I've been in the C-suite and, being a corporate, safety guy, but also being out in the field, you got to find, that theory coming from the standards. Okay, well, the book tells us this, but we're out in the field and it has to be practical. Now, granted, we're going to maintain that level of standardization principles right there, but we have to make sure it's practical for what we're not going to do something way out of line that's going to cost one more time. It might cost more man hours to put somebody in there, but then it causes more risk.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, zero.
Exactly.
Like zero is principled. It's not practical.
Correct.
And well, one of the things, I've worked with a lot of engineers, and I like to dog on engineers a lot just because I'm around them a lot and they annoy me. So like my dad and my stepdad are both engineers. So I love them. They're awesome. I admire them. I look up to them. They've sacrificed for me. Like, I know that they're very loving individuals, and I love them so much. Now, with that being said, engineers drive me nuts because, especially in a safety context, what ends up happening is you have people working in an ivory tower in the C-suite. They write down a procedure. They don't involve the frontline people with it. The people who know the job better than anybody, they know it like the back of their hand. When you go out and ask, someone on the front line, my favorite thing to ask is, what's the most unsafe thing that you do here? and they'll tell you what it is. Like, you don't have to watch and figure it out. They will tell you because they're the experts, right? So you should incorporate them in writing the policies that you're expecting them to abide by, because if it's not practical, they're not going to abide by it. They're just not.
No.
And so what ends up happening is, and this is one of the reasons why, another reason I don't like Zero is because it ends up in this blame culture, because it pits, man, it's an us versus them thing, because the upper management writes the procedure almost like an engineer does it. They write almost like a code into a computer, as if they're writing a code into a computer, but it's not practical to treat people like a computer, you know?
Right.
So they write the code, and then if the human gets hurt, then he must have violated that code. And so then they go sniffing out, well, where did you violate the procedure? Because, you know, my procedure is perfect, of course, and you violated, you got hurt. That means you violated it. And now we're going to punish you. And that doesn't serve learning at all, because people see that. Now they're afraid of getting in trouble if they report something. And then also, if you fire an employee, even if he violated a procedure, you can't use that employee as a cautionary tale for, you know, the rest of the employees. Some of the best training material I've ever seen that impressed me the most was employees who screwed up, got seriously injured, but the company kept them on, stayed loyal to them, took care of them, and then asked them to tell their story, and they recorded it, and then they shared it with all the other employees. It is the most compelling stuff ever. And any employee who sees that now you can take that and give it to employees as they're onboarding new employees that come in, and you can pass those lessons learned on to the other employees, so that they say, oh, that's why we have this procedure. And then it's like it clicks, and now they've internalized it. And that intrinsic motivation that they feel now is going to be much greater than any sort of external threats you can make. Right. And then also, you're not sacrificing your relationship with your employees, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, you know, it comes to the point where, you know, if you involve them, the ones that are doing the work, that know and have the skills, you know, the trades, in what procedures you're trying to implement, what, you know, kind of practices you want to have company wide, guess what? Then it's a little more valued, because, you know, they can go say, hey, well, I helped write this procedure, or I helped fix this problem that we had and made it better for everybody. And then they're going to come and say, hey, you know, this guy knows what he's talking about. So Nathan Bennett said, I'm on the floor 4 to 5 hours a day. It took me 3 years for people not to see him as a safety homeland security guy. That's funny. People are pulling them to say, hey, come look at this. This is my idea. What do you think? 5 years in, and it's paying off. Then he also said, yes, include them. It works.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nate. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Showing respect to people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. And you know, if you're just treating people like robots and threatening them and trying to force feed people ideas, it's not going to work.
Right.
You have to get that buy-in.
Exactly.
And ownership, right?
Accountability and ownership. That's what I was getting ready to say. The ownership behind that is definitely one that once they own it and it's their program, it's not, you know, the corporate safety directors. This is our program. We drive this program. It goes so much smoother. You have less incidents. You have less, you know, you have more accountability on the floor level, you know, of them holding each other accountable to certain things. My man Rizzo said, Philip said, great stuff, Pedro and Redbeard. OSHA rules and regulations are sadly written in blood. Yes, they are. In your opinion, is the safety industry slow to make necessary changes to help protect workers more, just like the FAA and the aviation industry to slow to make changes unless there's a plane crash?
Yes.
My answer to that is yes. They
for sure.
You know, for sure. You know, again, you know, and like you said, it's the standards were written in blood. Somebody had to lose their life for somebody to say, oh shit, let's make a standard so that way no more loss of life happens. But again, slow to make those changes and it sucks that it has to cost somebody their lives for us to make change instead of being proactive in trying to make those changes prior to somebody having, an injury or a fatality.
Right. Exactly. Well, and not only that, I mean, it's not totally their fault either, because anytime they try to make changes, they get challenged. And, rightly so. I think, when they implement any sort of regulation on a company, there's a burden put on that company. And so, it has to go through the process of, people can make comments on it, and they have to make sure that it's not putting an unfair burden on the companies. But, any company that's, yeah, any company that has a good safety program, you don't really care that much about compliance, because you're going to go so far above it. It's a minimum standard, really. You want to go much, much higher than that. So if any company is just trying to be compliant, that's not that, you can really step up your game a lot from that. There's a lot of area of opportunity from that
Right.
point forward.
Right. No, definitely. And my man Brian, thank you. Exceptional performance is invigorating and contagious. Yes, it is. Target zero always leads to disappointment. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Jennifer in the chat. Unfortunately, it's about numbers and not relationships. Yes,
That's right.
making sure we're trending in the right direction with these right numbers, and if we have an incident that's going to miss our numbers up, and yeah.
Yeah.
Tony
Well,
Taylor, my man, what's up,
what's
my
up,
dudes?
Tony?
What's going on? Speak on it, brother. I think he was talking to you, Redbeard.
Well, one of the things about those numbers is there have been studies on entire countries that have their incident rates that go down, but their fatality rates go up, and the severe injuries go up. And people say, "Oh, that proves the Heinrich triangle wrong." And it's like, no, not really. Not really. What actually is happening is now it's being underreported, except for the ones that they can't hide.
Right.
That's what's happening, because people aren't learning about the hazards. I mean, imagine. Okay, so I could do the exact same behavior 1,000 times and have a completely different severity level outcome every time. So here's an example. If I were to run a red light, anything could happen, really. I mean, for the exact same behavior, I could go through the red light and not get hit by anybody or not hit anybody and be totally unscathed. I could go through the red light and graze a vehicle or graze a person or whatever, and just cause a first aid or near miss or whatever. Or I could go through and a lot of people could die from it. That's all from the exact same behavior. So the severity outcome of an incident is very variable. It's just that natural variation where if somebody drops a wrench from a nacelle from a wind turbine, and let's say there's somebody standing down, or there maybe is somebody standing below, or maybe not. So it could not hit close to anybody. It could hit really close to somebody. It could hit on somebody's shoulder. It could graze their arm. It could go through their hard hat and kill them. So the severity level of the outcome doesn't really matter. It has the potential to kill you. A lot of things have that, it could. And so if you have this potential to kill you, they call it sticky. I've heard sticky is a good term for it. Stuff that kills you.
Stuff that kills you. Yeah.
Yeah. You've heard of that?
Yeah.
Stuff that kills you could be a near miss. Well, if somebody's afraid to report something, like let's say the wrench fell from the nacelle or whatever, and there was a violation because one of the employees didn't have some sort of what would you call it? Something you tie on. Can't think of the word. Like just like a tie off on their tool so that if they drop them, they don't fall.
Yeah. A lanyard. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lanyard.
Yeah.
If they don't have their stuff tied off and there was a rule to tie off, people aren't going to report that because they're, oh yeah, okay, we won't tell anybody about this, But then if that practice continues, then sooner or later it's going to hit somebody in the wrong spot, So.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And again, Tony said a lanyard.
Thank you, Tony, for saving me.
A tool tether. Lanyard. That's how I know. And,
tether. Yeah.
Yes, a tether. And
that's it.
Oh. Miss Nancy said a leash.
Yeah. That works too.
That works too. No, Tony. Oh my goodness. He has a confession. He was a Target Zero snake oil salesman for about a month. That's too funny.
And then you figured it out. That's pretty good though.
Hey.
Just a month.
Just a month. Some people take, a couple of years and they're this shit's not working.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. Like, some of these people, I have a theory about this where these people who are thinkers, right? There's some people who think like an inch deep and a mile wide. And they do that because they want to have an answer for everything, but they don't really think deep on anything. And there's a big advantage to doing that in the corporate world, because what ends up happening is you have an answer like real quick.
Yeah.
But then people who are a little bit smarter, people who know that there's multiple possibilities, there's multiple answers, and then you have to dig down deeper to get it. It takes much longer to respond, and you're less confident because of that. Because you're thinking, oh, well, okay, I could see 100 different possibilities. I don't know which one's the best. So you're less confident. But somebody who's, maybe a little bit like dumber is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to jump in on the first thing I can think of. Well, then the people like, that are more analytical are going to say, oh, wow, he must have already analyzed all those 100 ideas and he already knows what's the best one. Okay, I guess he's really smart and he's a leader. It's not actually like that. The people who are making these decisions really quick, they're these guys who they're kind of idiots, and then they rise up because they're seen as being confident, and that translates into being intelligent. I talked to a CEO one time trying to explain this very thing, the reason why lagging indicators are inferior for goals versus leading indicators, the things that you're putting into the system upstream. I explained it to him, and I tried to like distill it down and dumb it down as simple as I could, and he was just staring at me like I was speaking Greek or something. It's like, these guys are not deep thinkers in most cases.
Yeah.
And if all you're doing, I think Jennifer said it earlier, if all you're doing is trying to look good, if it's all about the optics, then all it is I want this number on this piece of paper to look good, and I don't really care about anything else. I don't care how you get it. I want this number to look good. Well, if you tell somebody who doesn't know how to do it, they're just like, well, okay, I guess we just won't count these things, and that makes the number go down. So
yeah, no. Tony again, my man. He said that shit was stupid. It sounded good though.
There you go.
It always sounds good when you bring up the idea, oh man, we're gonna reach zero and there's this big banner. Hey, 0 accidents. Yes. It sounds great in a perfect world.
Yep.
But practicality and again, Tony, Redbeard, you're very intelligent. That he is your biggest.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, greatly appreciate it. And again, the big banners, yes, and again, I've been in companies to where target 0, we got to hit 0 incidents. We have this big banner. We put all this stuff into play. But again, you don't connect with the people because you're so worried about crunching the numbers and the KPIs on how we're tracking to get to our 0. We forget about everything else. And, especially newer safety professionals coming in, do not be blindsided by a 0 target. Please reach out to anybody that knows a little something about this. Target 0 is not a great goal. Now, granted, reaching 0 incidents, 0 injuries, perfectly fine. That's great. But you have to know that your target goal should not be 0.
Right. When you set a goal on your measure, it ceases to be a good measure.
Correct.
It's called conflict of interest. I mean, that's the same reason why. So there's different red flags. Like I went to school for arson investigation like way back in the day, and then I became a certified firefighter and all that stuff. And it's a really cool thing when they go to look at a fire. You always start from a place of like least damage to the place of most damage. Mm-hmm. So you work your way from least to most, and you look for signs that will point you towards the origin of the fire. And then also you look for things called red flags. And I've applied that to pretty much everything. Like if I'm ever considering, applying at a place, I interview them to find out what's going on there, right? And I watch for these certain red flags, Yeah. And there's all kinds of red flags for, companies that don't truly value safety. Like for example, if you have your top safety slot or safety position reporting to the ops manager or reporting to the VP of operations and not the CEO, and the VP of operations has goals based on the number of recordables, there's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I mean, in accounting, they have all kinds of controls and oversight and audits and all kinds of stuff in place to try to ensure that conflict of interest isn't a problem, because it's a recognized problem. People are people. People are consequence driven. So if you set a goal saying you can only have 4 recordables, and if you have 5, then you lose 25% of your end of year incentive, and that's the VP of operations, you better be damn sure that he's going to be on top of that and the safety person will be on a leash, tether, or lanyard. And you will not be getting the full story. So the CEO needs to know what's really happening. If he's going to be steering, and there's the safety guy saying, "Hey, there's a glacier over there. There's an iceberg over there," but then the guy's like, "No, don't tell him that because I don't want to lose my incentive." Well, you're gonna hit the damn iceberg. Yeah. That's what's gonna happen. Yeah. Someone's gonna die.
The Titanic. Yeah,
you're gonna sink like the Titanic.
Correct. No, and I like what you said there because again, the safety, whether it be the corporate safety director or if you have direct reports that report to you and then you report to somebody, you should be direct line to the CEO, the president, the owner of the company. Again, when it gets diluted to being put over to you direct report to the general manager or the COO. The VP, like you said, the VP of operations, it gets diluted because, again, the VP of operations is worried about operations. They're worried about production and getting the numbers and making sure the bottom line is real hefty for, again, those year-end bonuses. When you bring it to the CEO, he's like, oh, shit, you know what? My greatest assets, if they really understand my greatest assets are my people, and this is what's happening, let me actually step in and let's figure it out.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's another red flag is if they have the safety person or the safety role doing everything else too, like it just becomes a catch-all.
Yeah.
Like there's this one job I had applied for many years ago, and they had something along the lines of it was safety manager role, but you also were working with the engineers on Autodesk for design. You were also the graphics person creating like graphics for the buttons inside the machinery because it's like they sell globally. Yeah. And you can't just put English words because then their global users won't understand. Mm-hmm. You have to write the user manuals. You have to be the person to defend the company if they ever get sued. And it was just on and on and on. And I'm just like
what's
safety is, yeah, well, it's like safety is a full-time job. Yeah. And then also now I'm a graphic designer. Now I'm an engineer. Now I'm a lawyer or whatever. And it just went on and on. I'm thinking, I don't think they really value safety if they're expecting it just to be like a 10% of your job and you're just doing everything else as well.
There's another so damn knowledgeable, Nate. Damn.
Yeah, jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. Mr. Brian Humphreys again. It says it starts off with the question: do you believe that all accidents are preventable? If you say no, most accidents are preventable.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I do a line of posts on LinkedIn that I say, was it preventable? And it's all these ridiculous things that you wouldn't anticipate that could ever happen. And it's like, no, I mean, you can always go back and you can say, in hindsight, it's all contextual. So if in foresight is not 2020, hindsight's 2020. So you can always look back and say, oh yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, or you shouldn't have done that. But you can't change what you've already done. Right. So the only thing can be preventable, which is, future tense, is when you're in the foresight mode. And unfortunately, when you're looking forward, you can't see all that. Looking backward, you can see everything, but looking forward, you can't. And so it's like, you could always look back and say something was preventable if they would have done this or that or whatever. Mm-hmm. But without a time machine, it really isn't preventable. And the fact that it happened, it probably wasn't preventable because unless you're going to say the person did it on purpose or something, and that's just not it. And then even if you say, they could have done better and they could have prevented it, like somebody, well, that's not preventable either because people aren't perfect and there's no way people are going to stop making mistakes. There's always going to be somebody making mistakes somewhere.
Yeah, human
so
error.
It's not perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Human error. If you,
yes.
And I was talking to an engineer yesterday, and again, we're talking about, certain aspects of, the actual building we're building. But, again, putting all of this together, yes, you draw it out. You get the CAD drawing, a computer does it. You get all your measurements. Granted, yes, boom, we have to do it to this measurement. But again, you still have to account for the human error, the human factor that goes into everything that we do, from driving to building a building to even some of the engineering that goes into it. There's human error.
Yeah.
And once we've, embraced that, yes, there will be incidents. Do we want them? No, we don't. We don't want them. But when we embrace that and grasp that, yes, somebody possibly will get hurt, and figure out where they're possibly going to get hurt at, or how they might end up getting hurt, and figuring out those solutions to those problems, we then start to prevent the accidents from happening, the injuries
Right.
from occurring.
Right. And, it's something that I did a shift from how I saw safety, because I always saw safety as it's like its own thing kind of over here. But in reality, injuries are errors that hurt people. But there are lots of errors that happen in a company. Like I do a lot of reports, like I do a lot of data analysis, like 12-month rolling incident rate charts and like seasonal uptick charts and different types of gap analyses and benchmarking and all kinds of stuff. So I'm dealing with numbers all the time. And I would have just sheets full of numbers. And in order to make sure that there is no typos, because I'm telling you, I don't care how smart you are, you will make a typo sometime. You will.
Oh yeah.
And so the only way to make sure that those don't actually have a bad effect is that you have a system in place. Like the system that we used was, after one of us would fill out a report where we're just like typing in numbers or whatever, we would use a tool such as like peer review or independent verification or self-check or something like that. And in this case, we would go through every number. One person would read off the source numbers. The other person would walk through every single one and check off every single one. And we're talking hundreds of numbers. And that's just, and we would find errors once in a while. It was very low, but you would find them. And the same thing with injuries. Those are errors that end up hurting people. But I think that these principles that you can apply to reduce your injuries apply to also reducing other types of errors as well. So like in the human performance world, those things I just said, self-check, peer review, independent verification, those are called human performance tools. Right. Those are typically applied to safety, but you can apply those things to errors in a report as well. So if you use these things and integrate them into your overall culture so that people are double checking their own work, making sure that, when they're doing switching tasks, that they're following procedures, things like circle slash to make sure they don't lose their place in a procedure. There's all kinds of things you can do. And if you improve the operational excellence of your organization by integrating these types of best practices, then people are still going to be making mistakes, but they're going to be doing it safely. And you're going to have reduced errors overall, and people in your performance overall is going to be improved along with your safety performance. It's all integrated,
Yeah. And I was fixing to say that it all ties together. It's all integrated. And then with what happens when you stop having incidents, when you stop having those things, because you're integrating all these, again, principles and the practicality behind them, you then boost morale, ownership, accountability. Your numbers start to drop by themselves. It's not, oh, let me go fudge this, or
without publishing them.
Without publishing them, exactly. And then guess what? Now you've gone a year without, any incidents or injuries, recordables, and yes, that's a great feat, 365 days. But what are we doing to look past the 365 days? Are we looking to the 5 year, the 10-year mark? Where do we want to be? What initiatives are we going to put in place? What innovation are we bringing to the table to help our assets be successful?
Yeah. And that gets back to what's practical. Yeah. Like doing things that are principled but not practical, you're not going to get very far. But the cool thing is that with technology, things are becoming way more practical. We talked earlier about training and communication, and you had said you have to say something so many times in order for someone to really hear it. So when you're sitting down and doing a PowerPoint presentation, there's just a small percentage. I think the study I saw was something like, for traditional training with with a PowerPoint presentation, retention is something like 20%. So if you're trying to train your employees, if you believe in training and you think that knowledge is important, and it is, I would agree, but you're only going to get 20% retention, and probably less if it's not an actual classroom, probably less if you're doing computer-based training or like a learning management system. Those things are even worse because people, click, 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 click. They just want to get through. Like we all done it.
We've all done it. Yes.
We've all done it. And so innovation, that's why I like innovation so much, because that can solve problems that we normally could never solve before. So in training, I'm going to give a shout out to Abstract. It's a company that does virtual reality and augmented reality. Amazing. They're doing amazing things. And think about it. If you have a virtual reality training scenario, people are doing hands-on, and I'm telling you, it's immersive. I have a VR headset with me right here, and you get in there. I put my wife in it, and she did this thing called Richie's Plank experience, where you have to you're just standing on a street, and you walk into an elevator, and the elevator goes up and up and up, and then it opens, and there's a plank sticking out of the side of like the 30th floor of this building. And it's immersive. You feel like you're there when you're really just standing on the floor. You're not going to fall, you know. I put my wife on that, and she was too afraid to go out on the plank. You know, she's just like, "Oh no, I'm not doing this."
Yeah, no,
And so
because
that,
again, it feels
yeah,
real. You get the
oh,
reception.
it's
No meaning to cut you off, but
no, that's all right.
you know,
No, for sure.
and the virtual reality and augmented reality. You know, again,
Yes.
technology to push us, into the future and become more innovative. You know, again, the welding, the crane operation, simulators, and that type of stuff. It's the wave of the future. And again, some people are written word learners. Some people like death by PowerPoint, because that's what they know. Again, you get a younger generation that's coming through. Guess what? They like video games. They like being on the computer and
Yes.
Snapchat and video and images. So you give them that, and guess what? They retain it a lot more. And then
Oh yeah,
they're not the ones that are out there. They're actually leading the change.
for sure, for sure. Well,
It's,
another innovation is removing elimination, right? So the hierarchy of controls that we all know, the top in that hierarchy is elimination. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of self-driving cars. I mean, look how many people die driving cars. And I drive a 6-speed manual, like a fun little sports car. I love driving. Like I won't even get an automatic because I'm just like, that's boring. Except for when you're in stop and go traffic, then it's just a nightmare to have a manual. But I love driving the car. I love feeling like part of the road and everything like that. But as I'm getting older and like commuting to work in like the wintertime,
mhm.
and it's scary. It can get scary. It's very dangerous. And I'm becoming more risk averse, plus having a kid and all that. It's just like, why are we driving these cars ourselves? Like there's all these people dying. Like I drive to work and it says on this screen, it says, oh, 200 people have died this year on our roads. And I'm just like, golly, 200 people.
Yeah.
So eliminate the human. Humans are just there's a Harvard study that said humans are distracted nearly 50% of the time. It's 47% of the time. And so everyone talks about, they like to blame cell phones, but I'm telling you, I don't think humans have changed much in the last several hundred or thousands of years. People are just distracted. It's the way we're wired. You're not going to change that.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to focus on the system so that when people mess up, they don't kill themselves in the process. You want people to be able to fail safely because they're
Yes.
going to fail. They're going to be distracted. And so eliminate the human. And I don't mean eliminate people. I just mean eliminate that human factor. That's the number one tool we have in the hierarchy of controls. And technology is going to make it, more practical for us to utilize that.
Oh yeah, Mr. Nathan Bennett said, "Great job, sir. Love the information." Mr. Bryant Humphreys again said, "Fully autonomous motor vehicles have the potential to eliminate the four major causes of fatalities: intoxication, distraction, speed, and fatigue."
Nice,
I
good
totally
insight.
agree. That is awesome. And again, it's only a matter of time. Those of you that know the movie Demolition Man, it's coming. To where
Love that
you get
movie.
in your yeah, I love it. It's a good Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes movie. But you get in the car and it drives you to where you need to go. And again, after going out to the club, and again, young people, somebody's going to turn 21 someday, somewhere, and they say, "Hey, I'm going to go get drunk for the very first time," if they haven't already. And they're distracted. Teenage driving. My daughter is 15. She's getting ready to start driving. The distractions that I'm scared shitless that to put her in a vehicle. And it's just, and not so much for her being distracted, but everyone else around her that might be
Hmm.
distracted. And again, traveling for work, I'm up here in San Angelo right now, and on my way up here from Houston, it's a 5.5 hour drive. Um, it, I actually seen, it was probably about 42, 43. It's what I kept count. But again, that right there in itself, it was a distraction. But 43 cars in a matter of an hour of me being on the road that were not even paying attention to the road. They were actually text messaging.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm like looking at their damn phone.
Yep.
I'm like, wow, wow.
Yep.
So again,
People aren't going to stop.
no,
It's not
they're
going to
not.
happen. I mean, by now, if they're not going to stop, by now, you just need to eliminate that. Like I talking about your daughter driving, I totally relate. But my son's 7, so I have some time. But that's why I like the Cybertruck. That Tesla Cybertruck.
Yeah,
It's amazing. Like it can drive in the city, can drive on the interstate. The thing is like made with the same steel that they use in their rockets.
in the rockets. Yeah.
It's like, and that's why it's so angular, probably because it's probably so hard to mold that steel. They're just like, oh, we'll just put a couple creases in it to make it easier to, and then it's like bulletproof glass and stuff like that. I mean, that thing in an accident, somebody hits you, that's probably your best bet for survival. Something like that thing's a beast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it definitely is. And I mean, I seen the truck and I looked at it and I was like, that might be pretty cool to be out there. But just thinking about it being autonomous and it drives in the city and that type of truck and innovation. It
Yes.
goes a long way, and yeah, if I can get my daughter a Cybertruck when they start making them and then put them out, guess what? I'll get her that and say, hey, you don't
Yeah.
have to drive.
Nah.
You just have to have a driver's license to be in a vehicle, but you don't have to drive the car.
Yes, exactly. Well, there are people that have like these business models already where they're doing like Uber, but it's going to be Cybertrucks, and they're just going to send them out. Like you could also use it in your own house, like for your own home. You just have one vehicle because it could take you to work and then drive itself home, and then pick up your wife and take her wherever she needs to go, and then go pick up your kid from school, and then it could do all that by itself.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing stuff. Technology, innovation.
That's awesome. So let's kind of switch the topic a little bit, give a little bit of you to the people that don't know you. Tell us a little bit about the books. The children's book that recently came out, and then the safety book that you ended up putting out.
Sure. Yeah. So the children's book, there's all kinds of symbolism integrated into it. It was an idea I had in my mind for several years, and I wasn't able to finish it because I just didn't know how to finish the story. And then I ended up watching a psychiatrist's. He's a professor in Toronto, I think. He had this something like 100 hours or more of his lectures he posted on YouTube. And I started watching them, and they were so fascinating to me. And he started going through all these character archetypes and breaking down different, these really just timeless stories like Pinocchio and stories like that. And that gave me the inspiration to finish the book. And there's a little Pinocchio doll in the background of one of the pictures because it's an homage to Pinocchio, because that, Pinocchio kind of inspired me to finish the book and stuff. And so there's all this symbolism, all the things I talked about today, for example, like the principles. So the main character, his name is Fennec, and he's a phoenix archetype, right? So death and rebirth. That's the learning process. So we talk about learning. Well, that's the phoenix symbol. So he is the learner, and you have to face your monsters, right? So he faces a monster. He ends up going through something called a mandorla, and that's, I'll get into all that detail, but he goes in, faces his monster. Well, when he's down in this cave, there's a girl that appears. Her name is Prin. Well, Prin is short for principles, right? She pushes him to face his fears. Okay. And so then he defeats the monster, but also ends up, there's a scene in there where he's face down in the water, just like Pinocchio when he faced Monstro, he's face down in the water or whatever. Yeah. And just like Pinocchio, he's reborn. So Pinocchio becomes a real boy. And then my character basically is reborn, and he's full of color, and he's all new and everything. And then the monster converts itself into these books, which is the process of learning. It's just representative of knowledge, that kind of thing. And then he ends up getting to a better place because of it. And I wrote the book to teach my son to face his fear of the dark originally.
Nice.
So that's the children's book, and it's called Mandorla, and it's available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, or digital. And then the other one is just, it's a short read. This is my copy of it. It's called 5 Principles for Parenting and Occupational Safety Management. And a lot of the stuff that we talked about today, I've talked about in there. It's just supposed to be a quick kind of, I try to condense ideas down into the most simplest pill form. There's all these books out there that are just, they go on and on and on. And it's almost get to the point, I don't have time to consume very much. I'm always on the move. I have all this kind of stuff I'm working on in the background, and it's very difficult for me to get a book and sit down and read it. I just don't have the time. I'm a slow reader. like I'm a visual person, so I have to read and convert it to a visual thing in my head, and then suddenly I've been reading 4 pages and I'm like, wait, what did I read? I wasn't even paying attention. So, I wanted to keep it really short, just get to the nuts and bolts of it. And then I just kind of compared parenting versus occupational safety management, because in both cases you're working with people, and so I released that on Amazon, just a self-published little just a short read on that.
No, it's a great book. I highly recommend those that are listening.
Thank you.
Go pick it up. As well as the children's book. That one right there, I can't wait. For my youngest daughter, she's 9, to go ahead and read it and actually give me her thoughts on it. I want to read it as well.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, definitely, just to get some insight.
And how old is she?
She's 9.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I noticed that kids that are under 4, typically they don't seem attracted to the book as much. They can't keep their attention on it. But as soon as they hit 4 years old, you can get through the whole book and they want to read it multiple times and stuff. So it's pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No,
and then
awesome.
the last thing is one of the things I noticed working in corporate was I would get questions all the time, because I was working in kind of an umbrella company where it had 15 different sub businesses underneath it. And one of the businesses is a real estate division. They don't have a dedicated safety person. And even the ones that did have dedicated safety people don't always have the sharpest skills when it comes to OSHA record keeping. And like, who can blame them? It's not the most interesting thing in the world, So I ended up in the situation where I'm getting asked all the time, is it recordable? Is it recordable? Hey, Nate, is this recordable? So I was like going back, studying. And so now I have a pretty strong grasp of OSHA record keeping. And so I built isitrecordable.com, and it's free. You can just go and peruse, find information. There's a cool search feature on there to find things more easily. Or you can submit a question and I'll answer it personally. I'm the only one that has access to the site. It's just me. So if you ask a question, I'll get back to you. I'll give you what I think, and then I'll give you links to why I think that directly to the OSHA website, in case, trust but verify. If you want to verify what I'm saying, don't take my word for it. This is what OSHA says, but I'll condense it down, explain real quick, and then provide the links. So
that's awesome.
Just service to my fellow safety pros.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, you guys see it on the banner right there on your screens. If you're still watching, www.isitrecordable.com, to go, ask your question, get a lot of insight. There's a lot of good stuff on there. I've been browsing around there, getting some, and it's crazy because you come up with these very intricate ideas of how somebody could possibly get hurt, and asking the question.
Some of them are true, some of them are fictional, and I have to also give credit to Whit Theobald. So Whit I've been working with him, and he's provided a lot of them. So here's a little tip: when you're on the site, go look in the lower right hand corner, and it'll say contributor, and then if it says there will be initials of whoever contributed, and it'll link you to their LinkedIn profile. And nice. Whit has been amazing. We've been working together. He's been contributing a lot. I think maybe he has more than I do now on the site, because he's just like my guy. So I'm just going to him. Yeah. But he's been an amazing support. He comes up with a lot of really good ones. So I have to give credit to Whit.
That's awesome. So let everybody know where they can reach you at. We've already hit our hour mark. So, where do they find you at? How do they get in touch with you?
For sure. Well, the best way is to just follow the hashtag Redbeard on LinkedIn, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll accept every single connection request. So just reach out, hit connect, I'll connect back. And then I'm also on Facebook. I show up in the U.S. Safety Professionals group once in a while. Like, I'll post my Is It Recordable stuff in there. But mainly I'm most active on LinkedIn. And then if you use the chat feature on isitrecordable.com, that comes straight to my cell phone. So if you ever want to chat with me, just chat there and you'll get me. It'll be me. It won't be a bot. So that's the best way to reach out.
Nice. Again, thank you, Nate, for blessing us with your presence and coming out on the live stream and getting some people a better understanding of the target zero and why it's, like, I like how you say it, such a shit goal.
It is. It is.
But again, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you, my man.
Yeah. Well, it was an honor. Thank you for having me.
No, not a problem, and we'll definitely be doing it again. So. Everybody, say bye to Nate.
Bye, everybody.
All right, everybody. You know where to find me at. We greatly appreciate you tuning in. I hope you got some value out of it. Again, you knew where to reach us: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the X Factor Safety. Except on Twitter, it's SafetyX_Factor. So remember, ask yourself one question: What is your X factor? Until next time.